RadioTennis.com, the podcast. Today, Ken talks with the former ATP number 6, Aaron Krickstein. Great career and famous 5-set match against Jimmy Connors at US Open. Please subscribe to the channel and give Ken a like if you enjoy the podcast. Now here is Ken Thomas.
And today we have a special guest, an amazing ball player, 9 titles, semifinals in multiple Grand Slam events, 10 years on the tour, played Davis Cup for the United States 4 times. And we're going to get into all this stuff, but just a player's player, a true legend. Aaron Krickstein, welcome to RadioTennis.com, man.
Thank you very much, Ken. Great to be here and talk to you for the first time.
We finally get to see each other. I finally get to meet you after all these years. You know?
Yes.
But before we get into it, I always like to tell a guest they played just congratulations. I mean, congratulations on just an amazing career. I mean, you were out there, the highest highs, just unbelievable. Congratulations on what you accomplished in your amazing career.
I really appreciate that, Ken. Thank you. It was a great ride, fun while it lasted. I had a great time getting to the tour, and thought I had a pretty good career, so to speak. So all good. Unbelievable,
man. To our listeners out there, I got to kind of do a little disclaimer here. Aaron and I are from the same part of Detroit, Grosse Pointe, and we kind of ran in the same. By the way, I know we got people listening in Grosse Pointe today. They text me and email me, so hello to everyone out there in Grosse Pointe. But so we kind of ran in some of the same circles, knew some of the same people. So it's I feel like I'm talking to a guy from my neighborhood. So with that, Aaron, let's take it right from the very beginning, man. Tell our listeners where you were born and raised, and how old were you when you got into tennis?
Well, I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the University of Michigan, so that's why I'm a big fan. I always loved Michigan. So I lived there for 2 years, and then my dad was a doctor and worked at St. John Hospital in Detroit. So I think he was tired of making the trek from Ann Arbor to Maross Road in Detroit. So he bought a house in Grosse Pointe Woods, right across from North High School on 564 Glen Arbor Lane. Still remember that. And so I started. We lived there at 2 years when I was 2 years old. And I had 3 older sisters, Kathy, Rachel, and Renee, and they all played tennis. So I started at 6.
At 6.
Which nowadays would probably be considered old. But remember back then we only had wood rackets, and I think it was 26 inches. They standard size tennis racket is 27, and I still have my first tennis racket.
Do you?
A Schlesinger wood racket. Yeah, it's pretty beaten up. I remember the last time I played with it was against my mom, and she beat me 7-6. I kind of accused her of making a few bad calls, which wasn't very nice, but I was pretty competitive at that stage, and that racket took a beating. But so I started actually at 6 years old. Yeah,
wow.
All my sisters played, and just got into it that way.
And who kind of worked with you in your game? I mean, we talked about this a little bit, but who helped you with your game early on, from the very beginning?
Well, my dad was an athlete, and he obviously loved tennis. That's why I got my 3 older sisters involved. And I think Kathy, the oldest one, she was about 8 years older than me. She loved tennis, and she kind of took me under her wing, and I remember taking me out to the courts and hitting some balls with her. And, of course, my dad watched me, and I think he recognized that I had pretty good eye-hand coordination at an early age right away. And I was a swimmer, too. I used to swim for the Lockmore swim team at the club. I was a pretty good butterflyer and freestyler. So I used to do that as well. So I was like swim and tennis. Those are my 2 sports up until about 10 years old. But he was the one who would oversee all my coaches, all my practice sessions, and make sure I'm heading in the right direction, so to speak.
It's really touching that your sister would take you out and say, "Hey, do this, do that" from the very beginning. You know, it's really
it was pretty good. I think being the baby of the group and the only boy, I think probably helped. But yeah, we had a nice relationship. I remember she was quite a bit older than me. I was probably closer to my other sisters. Compared to Kathy, as we got a little bit older. But I remember at that stage of my life, she would take me out and feed me and hit me some balls.
It's
when
really
I was
nice.
6. Yeah, it was great.
Nice. On the press release that we send out just before we go live on the air, I tell the readers a little story where the first time. When is the first time that I ever saw Aaron Krickstein? It's the first time I've laid eyes on you, and I was over at Lockmore, and I was I think I was talking to somebody, and I kept hearing this boom, 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 consistent boom, boom, boom. And I looked over the down onto the court, and you were going against a ball machine, and you were just at eight, and you were just throttling forehand after forehand after forehand, and the ball's hitting the back of the tarp and making that boom sound, And I'm thinking, because you were 8, I wasn't, you were an Aaron Krickstein that you are today, So I all I remember thinking is like, I didn't hit my forehand like that at 8 years old.
Yes, I remember that ball machine good. It was an old original Prince ball machine that my dad actually bought. It was he got it for me. So,
really?
When I didn't have anybody to practice with, even though he was the one who set up pretty much my schedule, he'd have the ball machine, and the pros at Lockmore would allow him to keep it behind the curtain. And when I couldn't get a game or whatever, I'd go out there a couple times a week and use the ball machine. It actually was a great training tool for me, and something I could work on my conditioning, my footwork, balance, and now the ball machines can do a lot more than they could back then. But still, I still remember using it quite a bit, and it helped a lot.
I'll tell you what, you were pumping that forehand at like however old you were, 8, 9, whatever it was. You were thumping it.
Yes, I still got some old VHS clips that my dad took at Lockmore, ironically. I haven't pulled them out. I should probably take those to a video store before they go really bad. But some of my old practice sessions, my dad would video and on the old Boltecs at Lockmore. And I remember I could still generate pretty good pace at 8, 9 years old. Because some of the kids I hit with nowadays are like, hey, you think you could beat me, when you were that age? And I'm like, yeah, I think I could have beat you still. Trying to be as humble as I can and not too cocky, but I'm like, yeah, I think I could still beat you. You got to work harder. Come on, get out there more. It was
I'll never forget it. I was, So, do you start playing tournaments around southeastern Michigan? I guess that's the process, right? The original process. Is that correct?
I did, yes. My first tournament, I started playing at 6, picked up a racket, and I was playing tournaments at some point at 7. I remember, and I lost my first match 0-0, cried after, and was real upset. But my dad kind of consoled me and said, come on, you'll get him. So I just remember a year later, guy's name was Mike Kiewit. I played him in the same tournament a year later. I think it was the Michigan State or whatever, some closed tournament, and got revenge and beat him just as bad the following year.
Really?
So I remember my first match was not a good one, but then I got revenge a year later, and then I was off and running from there, playing who knows how many hours.
The path that I remember was that, okay, you'd be kind of forced to play the Southeastern Michigan Junior Qualifier, right? I'm sure
Correct.
You played that, right?
Yes.
And then that would feed into the Westerns, right?
Correct.
In Indianapolis.
Yes.
And that would punch your ticket to play national junior events.
Correct.
Did you do that? Did you play the Westerns? Did you play?
I did in 12 and under. But then once I think my ranking was high enough when I was when I reached number 1 on the 12 and under nationals. I think the next year I didn't have to play the SEMTA qualifying. I think I was automatically exempt into the 14, meaning Westerns. So I didn't have to do that. And then by the time 16, it was almost like automatically into the nationals. I think I was able to skip that process, but not early on when I was, 10, 11, 12,
Gotcha.
13.
So you were 1 in the country in the 12s?
12s, 14, 16,
Way to
18,
go, buddy.
Yeah.
Way to go. Nicely done.
Junior career.
Not bad. We talked again a little off air. Let's talk about some of these guys from Michigan that helped you in those developmental years. Who was kind of helping you with your game? It was you mentioned it was kind of a group that you worked with over the years.
Yes, early on. I spent a lot of time at Lockmore. That was the club. We were 2 minutes away from Lockmore, so my dad would bring me over there. And I think Brian Marcus and Mark Chelina were the first couple pros there, and subsequently went on to John Hainline and Chuck Brainerd.
And for our listeners out there, Marcus was a star player at University of Michigan. Hainline was a stud player at Michigan. So just for our listeners out there, these are and Chuck Brainerd played at Michigan State.
They were all good players.
So these early developmental years are these guys basically that played Michigan college tennis, right?
Correct, no doubt. And then my dad took me over on the east side of Detroit, or a little over to Lakeside, into Wimbledon Racket Club, where Bill Struck and John Trump had some clinics, so I hit with them. John Cook used to give me some privates when I was probably 8, 9 years old.
Great guy.
Good guys, good players, and they had a great junior program, and Joe Shaheen as well in that area. And then I would go over to the west side of Detroit and hit with Ian Harris and Mark Connie had a clinic. So it was a wide variety of people that my dad had me hit with, working on different things. It wasn't like they were going to change, my strokes or technique, but just fundamentally work on individual things that each one maybe could help me differently than somebody else.
That's really cool. That's
yeah,
pretty interesting idea.
Pretty lucky that my dad could do that. He would recognize who maybe could help me with certain things in my game, and then play enough, and he would watch enough, and kind of take it off from there. But I played a tremendous amount of matches at a young age. My dad had me play girls who were nationally ranked 2, 3, 4 years older. When I was 13, 14, he had me play men, who were in his game, who were, college players, good players. He had me play top-ranked, male players. So just a lot of variety that I got to play against, and I think that helped me as I grew into the junior years and then playing professionally as well.
Gotcha. Did I hear that you worked out or when you were young with Segura?
I did. I went to see. My dad took me out to see Pancho Segura. He went. This is when I was 11. So when I was 11 years old, I think he recognized I had pretty good talent. I was top, one of the top couple players in the nation in the 12 and under. So he was like, I got to see what these really big name professionals around the country think of my son. So he took me out to see Pancho Segura, Fred Stolle in Miami, Dennis Ralston in Texas, among a few others. And I remember a book that I still have, Pancho Segura, and of course Pancho was funny. He was a character, and I just remember the whole lesson. He'd be like, "Hey Doc, look at this drop shot," and he'd hit a two-handed drop shot winner against me. And I'm like, this guy's like schooling me. He's like trying to show my dad how great a player he was. But he was very nice. And then before we left, he wrote in his book, I still remember it was 1979. He wrote, "Dear Aaron, in 7 years' time, your game should be as good as Bjorn Borg." So I was kind of like, wow, that's pretty big shoes to fill at 11 years old, but I'm going to take that to heart and work really hard. And ironically, 5 years later, I was able to turn pro and win my first ATP event. So didn't quite make it to Bjorn Borg's level, unfortunately, but I had a pretty good career, and I was happy with it.
Very. When you're in these years, this 11, 12 years, are you going to grade school in Grosse Pointe, or what are you doing?
Yes, I went to Barnes Elementary School, and then up to 6th grade, and then I went to Parcells Middle School in 7th and 8th, and then I went to University of Liggett for 9th and 10th grade. Played high school tennis there under Bob Wood's direction. So I did go.
Won the state.
Yes, I won the states there against a guy named Carlos Moravec.
Now that I think about it, Aaron, that's what we have in common. I won the state. You won C, right?
I did.
I won B.
My record,
we're the brotherhood
52-0, though.
Well,
close.
Close, but I don't have it.
Okay. But no,
I lost to Edberg. We talked about it. I lost to Edberg.
No, but I had some good matches. I played Luke Jensen.
Yeah.
I think he might have taken a set off me. There were some good players, even in the high school. But I enjoyed it because I never got to play any kind of a team sport. It was always tennis, mano a mano.
Yeah.
So the high school tennis experience, I actually really enjoyed. And of course, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt when you win almost every match you play.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I said, tennis was great for me. And I said, well, how do you enjoy it? You seem to, you played so many hours, 30, 35 hours a week when you're like 12, 13, 14 years old. I'm like, well, I was fortunate that I was just better than everyone. So when you're better than everybody else at a young age, it's obviously more fun too.
Yeah.
And the kids who tend to gravitate away or may stop playing is when they get passed over. They can't put in the time or the work, or maybe they're not quite as talented as some other ones. So it's not easy, but I enjoyed it. I had a great junior career.
At Liggett.
Yes.
Michigan State high school champion.
It was fun.
When do you leave? Do you ever leave Michigan? I mean, do you go down? Is that when you go to Bolletary?
So I did after 2 years at Liggett. So I was 15. My dad kind of felt like the competition was starting to wane, and I'd gone down to Bolletary actually my last year at Liggett, which was when I was a sophomore. I was going down twice a month on weekends. And I'd gone. My dad said, "I got to take you to Hotman's. I got to take you to Bolletari's. I got to see which one maybe you're going to work out at, or maybe you're going to eventually be down there." And so we went down for a 4-day weekend. And the first day I went to Harry Hotman, and I was ranked number 1 in the country in 14 and under, so a top junior.
So you're like 14 now?
I was 13.
13.
And my dad took me down and introduced me to Hotman, and he had me on a court with not such great players, to be honest, like 8 kids, and my dad wasn't impressed. I didn't really know from Adam. It's the first time I'd ever been in an environment like that with so many kids. So he's like, we're leaving. We're going to Bolletary. So I went to Nick's that afternoon. Only spent a day at Hopman when I was supposed to do 2 at Hopman and 2 at Bollettieri's. And we went right to Nick, and of course Nick rolled out the red carpet. He gave me everything, put me on stadium court, had me hitting with Jimmy Arias, had me hitting with, some of the other top names that he had at the time. So I think he sold my dad right away that this was the place that I was going to get competition, and somebody like Nick who's real positive, loved my game, wasn't going to tinker too much with it, and was going to be a good influence, and had worked with someone young like Arias and made the transition to the pro game. So after my sophomore year at Liggett, I decided that I would move full-time down to Bollettieri's, and subsequently my oldest sister Kathy was working there at the time, so it was kind of a win-win where she could kind of oversee things. My dad was still working up at St. John's in Michigan, but I would be full-time and finishing school up there, even though I was correspondence because I turned pro at the same time when I went full-time at Bollettieri's.
Gotcha.
So I went like a year at Bollettieri's every other weekend, and then I went full-time at 16 when I was a full-time pro, even though I wasn't a full-time pro like you would think, like right now, meaning like traveling 26 weeks a year. I was probably only playing about 14 weeks, 15 weeks a year on the circuit.
What were those Bollettieri years like? I mean, how did they handle you? How did, did you have like one guy, or were you involved with hitting in clinics, or was it privates?
I mean, Nick pretty much, he kind of kept me off. He helped me, in the aspect that he had a couple guys work with me individually. He was always overseeing everything. He always put me on the top court with, Arias and some of the other pros who were there. I just remember always being, on the top courts. I mean, he had a lot of pros there, and Fritz Buning, Chip Hooper, and some other big-name lady players. So, I always felt at home, and he always made me feel good about my game. And,
nice.
and I was on the court probably, 5-6 hours a day after school. I'd go in the morning till probably 12 o'clock, and then it would be all afternoon fitness training and just working on my game.
Gotcha. When you went off to the tournaments, then when you were full-time at Bollettieri, did someone travel with you? Did you have a guy that went
He
on
did.
the
There
road
was a
with you?
couple guys at Bollettieri's who travel with me.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I always had somebody with
Yeah.
me, and my dad still went at a few events, and so I did that for a couple years, and then 1985, Brian Gottfried was actually working there part-time at Bollettieri's and helping out, and that's when I kind of decided to make the move away from the Bollettieri Academy environment and go more toward one particular coach who I would work with. And ironically, Brian was over here actually at St. Andrews Country Club, where I'm now working. He was the touring pro, and so he was working a little bit with Jay Berger, a little bit with Jimmy Arias, myself, Michael Chang, in that 86, 87, 88 run. So I worked with him a little bit during that time, right at St. Andrews. So we had a good little niche of players, and I worked with Brian, and he kind of traveled to the Grand Slams with all of us and kind of worked individually. And then in the meantime, I traveled a little with my dad, and then he got guys from either the local area or even my friends that would travel, just so I would have a companion and a hitting partner to go along with that.
I may have the chronology wrong here. So you win Kalamazoo. By the way, what were your thoughts on winning Kalamazoo? What was that for? What was that like for you?
It was amazing.
You won it twice, right?
I did. I won the 16s at age 14 or just 15, and then I won the 18s a year later in my second year of 16s when I had just turned 16. So, and that was the real special one because it was from Michigan, and there hadn't been a winner in Michigan in a long, long time. So that was kind of a special accomplishment that I really had a goal since I was a young boy to get to Kalamazoo and compete in the Nationals, then to actually win it was a pretty special accomplishment for me, and I was real proud of that. And of course, when you're the 18 and under national junior champion at Kalamazoo, it gives you a wild card into the main draw of the U.S. Open. So what better way to jump into the limelight and play the U.S. Open that first year 3 weeks later?
All right, so this is what I'm wondering. This is where I may be off. So I see that you turn pro or you're playing pro, and then, what I can find from the ITF website, there's 3 to 5 tournaments where you just, you lost early. Mm-hmm. And then it looks like you show up at the U.S. Open, right? And is the first round you beat Edberg, right?
Yes.
Is that with the wild card from Kalamazoo?
Correct.
Jeez, Aaron.
So I was 15 playing some ATP events like you're talking about previous to Kalamazoo, as I was still a junior.
Yeah.
Obviously. And I probably played 3 or 4 tour events. I played the U.S. Pro Indoor Philly. They gave me a wild card. I played the U.S. Clay Nationals in Indianapolis. They gave me a wild card. I played, the Junior French, Junior Wimbledon, and I think I played a few qualies. But a few of these tournaments gave me wild cards, an opportunity. I lost in all of them, like you said. I think I lost 3 out of 4. Or maybe all in the first round, but started to get a little bit better, showing a little promise, close matches, and some guys ranked in the top 100.
And how old are you here right now?
I'm just 15. Okay, but then I won Kalamazoo at just 16 years old, and that got me the wild card in the Open. Of course, Edberg was ranked 80 in the world at the time. I really had no ranking, maybe like 500 at the time because I had lost first round at the time. There was probably 1,000 guys ranked, but I only had a few points because I had lost in the first round. So ironically, I faced Stefan Edberg, who's the number 1 junior in the world at the time. I was the number 1 U.S. junior in the country at the time, and he's ranked 80 though, so he's definitely top above 100. Me at the time. Yeah. Had passed me and was a stronger player at this stage in our careers, even though I was a great up and coming junior. And I remember that match like it was yesterday. It was a 5-setter. I won the first 2. He won the next 2. And it was 3-all in the 5th set tiebreak on a side court, packed crowd, probably about 6 rows deep. And I hit 4 consecutive winners to win the match. A return of serve, 2 topspin lobs, and a passing shot winner to win the match in the 5th set tiebreak. And I honestly believe that's the match that really propelled me into believing that I can play under pressure in a 5th set and nobody's beaten me in a 5-setter, that I'm going to have a great 5-set record. And then 2 rounds later, I happened to play Vitas Gerulaitis, who was the seed at the time. And I won that match down 2-0 in 5 sets. So I was kind of off and running with my 5-set record and confidence that I was able to get from those 2 matches.
Did you know Vitas before that at all?
I did not. No, I had never met him. Yeah. But he was gracious. I mean, he probably wasn't happy losing to a 16-year-old. I know in New
York. I mean, that's his backyard.
Yes,
man.
I mean, I know he had some issues with some drugs. He didn't go to the press conference afterwards, and I probably wouldn't either if I lost to a 16-year-old at the time, blowing a 2-0 lead. But it was an exciting time for me. Balotelli was there. My whole family was there. Then I lost to Noah on center court the next round.
Yeah, what's that like?
Well, he was the reigning French Open champion.
What's it like for you to walk on center court at the U.S. Open at 16 years old?
Yeah, it was amazing, and ironically, I felt like, I could win this match. I guess because I had won my last 45 junior matches, I'm in the 4th round. I'm like, why not? I'm thinking like, there's no pressure. I usually win, so why not keep it going? I mean, it sounds like an elitist, cocky attitude, but sometimes you got to be a little bit. And when you do that well, that's the kind of the mentality that you're going to have. And he beat me, and the pressure got to me a little bit. It was a pretty good match. I think he beat me like 3-6-3, but it was a great match. Now this was on a Tuesday, and I was supposed to start the juniors that week because the junior junior U.S. Open is the second week. Edberg ended up playing and winning because I beat him in the first round, and who knows, if I hadn't beaten him, I would have been playing, and he would have probably been playing the men's. So it's ironic how that kind of changed. And so I decided at that point that I think my time has come to end the juniors. I just won Kalamazoo 4th round, and I was going to turn pro, and I turned pro, had my press conference at Lockmore Country Club.
Did you really?
About a month later.
Did you?
And then I played my first tournament, got invited to a tournament in Tel Aviv, and won.
Wait, I don't want to go there yet. Hold on. Tell me your thoughts real quickly when you lost to Noah at the U.S. Open that year. Your general thoughts about how he played and how that match went down. Just what do you remember that match?
I remember first time playing in front of so many people. Yeah. I mean, even though the grandstand at the U.S. Open back in the day in the old grandstand was packed with Vitas, there wasn't a seat open in the house, and that was exciting to win that match. But the U.S. Open and playing on Louis Armstrong at the time was something I'd never experienced before. So you got 17,000 people, packed house playing Yannick Noah French Open. I mean, these are guys I just was watching the last year or whatever. Now I'm actually competing against him. So it was a.
What did he do well? What did?
He had a great first serve.
Did he?
Very athletic.
Yeah.
I felt like once the ball got in play, the advantage, or at least we were even, I should be able to out-ground stroke him, but he was so intimidating, so athletic, could come in on me. I really wasn't used to playing someone like that in the juniors who had such a great overhead, could, jump 3 feet off the ground and make athletic volleys and chip and charge and do some things that you just don't see in the juniors. So I think the moment got a little bit, but he obviously was a better player at the time. But like I said, held my own, and it was a good match. It was 3-6 and 3, so I was proud of myself. And then he actually lost to Jimmy Arias, so me and Arias were hitting partners because we were Bolletarias at the same time, and Arias beat him in 5 sets the next round, and he ended up getting to the semis. So I think it was an exciting time for the Academy, Nick, and and myself, of course.
So then, after the Open, you basically go to Tel Aviv, right? And did you get a wild card for Tel Aviv, or did you that first time you played, the first one you won?
I think I must have got a wild card.
You got a wild
because
card.
I'm assuming, because I don't think I had officially announced that I was going to be pro yet. Maybe by the time that the deadline was to enter the tournament, I know that some people were talking to my dad at the time about playing Davis Cup for Israel, and then maybe getting a wild card. And my dad was like, I think he wants to play for the United States, but thanks for the offer. That would be great. Maybe one time or whatever. But he'd like to play U.S. Davis Cup. But no, I think it was a wild card, but not 100% sure. I think I went from. I don't know what my ranking was after the U.S. Open, 489 to maybe 189 or something like that. It jumped up pretty high, obviously, and I was still an amateur until I decided to turn pro. But then my first tournament was, of course, Tel Aviv.
Gotcha. Did you take the check from the U.S. Open?
I did not.
You didn't take the check?
I don't. I always tell people, they say, how much did you make? And I'm like, do you know what the money is right now for a first-round loss?
Wow.
Let alone a fourth-round loss.
Yeah.
So the fourth-round loss was, I believe, $15,500.
Interesting.
For winning 3 matches.
Wow.
And now I think it's like $60,000 just to play and lose in the first round.
Yeah.
And then I always tell the story that when I semi'd in '89, it was $75,000 check, and now it's, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, who knows what it is. But obviously, it's 30 years ago, so long ago. But I did not, because I was an amateur, so you could just write it off as expenses at the time.
And then just a month later, basically a couple months later, you head over to Tel Aviv.
Correct.
You play this tournament. Did you have family and friends there?
I did.
Supporting you?
My parents went.
Oh, nice.
And my agent went, and I decided to turn pro just before it was going to be my first professional tournament, and thought it was cool that it would be in Israel, being an American Jew, and my grandfather being a rabbi, and I thought it was pretty cool that I was able to play my first professional event in Tel Aviv. And I got to tell you, I honestly felt like I'm a pro, and I won all these junior matches. I did great at the Open. There's no reason that I shouldn't be winning this tournament. I know there's some good players. I was a guy in the top 10 named Henrik Sundstrom, who I ended up playing and beating early in the tournament. And then after I got through him, I'm like, I don't think there's anybody I can't beat. This was the confidence that I had from all these junior matches that I won, and having that great U.S. Open. And lo and behold, things kind of just worked themselves out, and played well, and just went through the draw and ended up winning. So I was like, wow, this is amazing.
16 in what, 2-3 months?
2 months, yes.
2 months. Is that record still stand?
It does.
That's
the
amazing.
Closest was, I think, Leighton Hewitt. He won a tournament in Adelaide, and he was 16 and 11 months. So, often I think in this day and age, that's going to be a tough record to break. I got two records that stand that I think are going to be tough. That one, and then the youngest in the top 10 at 17 in 2 weeks. Just because the guys are so much bigger, stronger, and faster, and the game is just the speed of the game and everything. I mean, I go in the locker rooms even nowadays, the guys are 6'3", 6'4", and the big guys are so athletic and mobile. And not that they weren't great players back in the day, because it's hard to compare eras, but that's going to be a tough one to break, I think. So that we'll see. I mean, records are certainly made to be broken, and if it is, God bless him, whoever does it. But that's going to be a tough one.
Well, that's amazing. I was looking at I was doing a deep dive on that tournament in Tel Aviv that you won, and it looks like there was this one interesting match, and maybe it wasn't, but you played this other Israeli. Perkis?
Did I play him in the 83 and 80? Because I beat him in the finals in 84.
This is 83.
So I beat him twice, 2 years in a row, because I beat him in the 84 finals. I know that because I was able to.
That must have been an interesting dynamic. A guy, from, an Israeli.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was fairly popular. I think the Israelis knew who I was from probably the media exposure of what I did at the U.S. Open, and then coming over here as my first tournament, a young 16-year-old American. Jewish American coming over there, and I had to play an Israeli, so they were obviously rooting for the Israeli a little bit more. But but I played pretty well and got through him, and like I said, I was fortunate enough to win the tournament, which was exciting.
Very nice, man. Very nice. So that's like 83. Basically, that's 83.
Yes.
You pick up your first pro title. I was looking in 84. What a nice run you had in Rome at the Italian Open. Talk a little what you remember about that.
Yes, I think that after the Tel Aviv, I had a little. When was that? That was the end of '83. So I had a little knee surgery at the end of '83.
Oh, did you? Did you?
Just cleaning up some loose bodies. So I was out a little bit, and then '84 starts, and I did okay. Nothing tremendous in the beginning that I can remember, and then got to Rome, whereas when I really made the breakthrough there at the Italian Open, and was over there with Nick, and all of a sudden I just kind of lightning in a bottle. I just started playing great. Was using the old Ultra 2 racket, which small-headed racket. Used to string up my rackets pretty tight. At the time, I think I used to string it like 30 kilos, which for a small racket, that if anybody knows, that's really tight. And just played great. I mean, played 3-4, really great matches, and went all the way to the finals. Lost to Gomez in a windstorm.
Oh, did you?
Yes, it was like 40, 50 mile an hour winds in that match.
How many times did you play Gomez?
It was
like
crazy.
20 times.
Quite a bit. No,
I was looking.
Not 20, but a lot. He
played...
beat me the first 8 times, and he beat me in 3 finals. But I did get him the last 3, thankfully. But yeah, we had some good matches. He was a tough matchup for me, tough lefty from Ecuador. Beat me in Davis Cup, but that Italian Open final was a good one. It was, and I was playing well. He beat me in 4 sets, 2-6, and then pretty easy the next 3. But that was like my first big breakthrough that I felt like, wow. Even it'd been a while since I had really felt like I was competing at the highest level or could maybe break in, and that I think put me to about number 26 in the world. And then, like I said, that gave me the confidence. And then about 6 weeks later, the old clay court season in the United States started, where the U.S. Pro Indoor in Boston came. And that was my first big win, where I beat Jose Louis Clerc in the finals, down 3-0, 2 breaks in the third. And he was ranked 5 in the world, beat Arias, who was ranked, I think, 4 in the world at the time. Both those guys were in the top 10. And I won that tournament, and I was still 16.
Jeez.
So, and that put me to number 11. And then 2 weeks later, I got to 9. Or 3 weeks later when I was just 17, and that's another record that I have. So I had a great summer in there. Final Washington, won Boston, and
you won Tel Aviv in '84, right?
And then won Tel Aviv and Geneva as well, beating Wielander. So I had back-to-back wins. But that's kind of ironically where I kind of hit a wall with injuries. I just broke into the top 10, like I said, won back-to-back titles. Defended in Tel Aviv and won Geneva, beating Wielander, who was obviously one of the best clay courters in the world, French Open champ. And I noticed in that finals against Sundstrom, after beating Wielander in the semis, that my foot was hurting. I was supposed to go to the Davis Cup tie the next week in Portland, Oregon, where it was McEnroe and Fleming and Connors on the team, ironically, in '84, because Arias had mononucleosis. So I was the one who was to fill in that singles play. And Arthur asked me to come over, and he didn't know that my foot was hurt, obviously,
right.
And I wasn't going to play. So when I got there, I was limping around, and my dad's like, "Look, you got to get an X-ray or a bone scan." So I had a bad stress fracture, so I was out. Needless to say, McEnroe wasn't too happy with me because now he was going to have to play the dead rubber. I couldn't play the dead rubber match, so
sorry, John.
I went back home, and to Michigan about a week later, after the Davis Cup ended, and had foot surgery and was out 3 months. I had a screw put into my right foot by Robert Taija. I remember he was the Lions doctor at the time, and that was my first major injury at a young age. I got kind of high arches in my feet, and I broke the bone in my 5th metatarsal. So at the time, you either have a screw put in or you get it casted, but my dad didn't want to take any chances. So I had the screw put in my right foot, and
so you had knee surgery. You had a little knee surgery, and you had something on your foot.
A year
by
later,
the time you're like 17.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So that kind of set me back. I made the Masters with my good year. Lost to Johan Kriek actually in my first match back in January. The Masters used to be in January in Madison Square Garden. And I really struggled in the beginning of '85. It was the second year I was coming off that injury. And just couldn't really, second year slump, whatever you want to call it, sophomore slump coming off that injury, and guys kind of knowing my game a little bit, making some adjustments. But I was still hanging in there, but not doing as well as I thought. And
finals in Hong Kong, finals twice in Tel Aviv,
correct.
Finals in Detroit during '84 and '85. Yeah,
correct. So but I did have another stress fracture in '85, and then I had a stress fracture in my left foot in '86, and then I had some major stress fractures in the tibia and left foot in '87. So 3 more consecutive years I was out for at least 2 to 4 months in '85 and to '87, and then missed 8 straight months in '87. So a lot of injuries kind of crept into play there from the late 84 into 87. And that's kind of why my ranking dropped all the way to 61 at the end of 87 because I missed the last 8 months of that year.
Yeah.
And then ironically, of all the bad luck, my first day back after this tibia fracture, I was out for 5 months. I'm coming back. My doctor was in New York. I was in a taxi cab from practice, and we get sideswiped off the LIE Expressway in a car. The cab does. So I fractured 2 ribs. I'm out another 2 months.
At the Open?
No, it was in New York, but it was in October. So I had to miss another 2 months of practice because we got hit. I was in a car accident after all recovering back from all these injuries. So it was unfortunate. I mean, could have happened to anyone. It was unfortunate it happened to me at the time. So that didn't help my ranking and my confidence. And when you miss a lot of time when you're on the tour, you miss that time to work on your game, to improve. And I feel like those are some big years for me that I needed to make some improvements in my net game, transition game to the net, work on finishing points, working on my serve, trying to go to that next level as not just, a guy ranked maybe 8 to 15, but trying to break maybe into the top 5. So when you tally up all the time that I missed with injuries in those 3 years, I felt it really curtailed my ability to work on my game. And then when I'd come back, I just wanted to win some matches, play some matches, and try and get back into the flow of things.
Well, you came back strong, man.
I did. The next 4 years were my best. I started working with Tim Gullickson, my dad. Got him as my coach. He met him after he was working with Martina Navratilova, hooked me up with him. He was down here at Boca West, so I was living down here, and we thought it would be a good mix with me and Tim. And I started working with him the next 3.5 years, and I think those were the 3 best years of my career up until the Connors match, and then we had a little falling out. But basically those were definitely my best.
89.
Best years.
You win Sydney, you win Los Angeles over Chang. You win Tokyo indoors in 89. And then in 89, obviously the big story is the U.S. Open, right? Semifinals in 89.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That was my first breakthrough at a slam where I really got through. I mean, I had good results at the Open every time I played, meaning fourth round, several of them, but never broke through. And 88 I quartered, and then 89 I finally got to the semis. And there was a stretch in 89 from, I believe, the 4th round at Wimbledon where Becker beat me, and then he ended up winning the tournament. Every tournament for the rest of the year, I either won the tournament, which was 3 titles, like you just mentioned, or I lost to the guy who won it. So usually as a tennis player, you're playing, if not the best at that tournament, the second best or one of the best players. Right. And that really gave me a lot of confidence, and I think that was my best stretch run as a player. No injuries, was really moving well, playing at a high level. And then early in 1990, I got to my career high, number 6 in March. So
tell us how, when you're at that level, how do you view majors? How would you approach majors? What was your thought going into a major?
Well, I think your schedule as a professional, if you have goals to go far and actually try and win it, is all geared around the majors. I mean, I think if you ask Roger Federer now, Djokovic, or Nadal, they all would say the same thing. They want to plan their schedule so that they get enough matches, aren't burned out, and yet are peaking at the right time for the majors, because that's what it's all about. And I think even though I didn't have the success like those guys did, I still wanted to obviously play my best at the majors. And I always felt like 3 out of 5 sets gave me the best chance, which was played at the majors, because I felt like I was fitter than everybody else. I could play longer. I was never going to get tired. And I felt like the longer the match went, I had a great 5-set record. I think mentally and physically, it gave me an advantage. So that always gave me confidence going also into a Grand Slam event. But the bottom line is you try and make your schedule where you're going to be confident, play enough matches, win enough matches, but not play too many matches. So I would try and play, maybe like a couple tournaments, 3 tournaments, and maybe a month or so before, and then maybe a week off before the Open and practice that week. So I would try and play 3 and then off the week before. Now, if I was injured or maybe lost early the 2 weeks prior, I would try and go for a wild card the week before, because there's no substitute for playing matches. At least that's how I felt. Yeah. I needed to get the confidence. I could practice all I want, but if you're not doing anything in matches, it's not the same thing. So I felt like I needed to play quite a few matches, win some matches, enough matches where I had the confidence and feel good going into the major, and then I'd feel good about that.
Talk about that U.S. Open. I'm trying to pull it up. I don't know. At the top of my fingertips, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I can't remember how it went down. So tell me.
89. I think I had some tough matches. I had not an easy draw, not an unbelievably hard draw. I can't remember what I was seeded. I was obviously seeded there in 89 after I was probably close to top 10 at the time. But I'm trying to think who I beat now. Jeez, many U.S. Opens. I think in the quarters. I know in the quarters I played.
By the way, you played 28 Grand Slam events.
I did?
28.
Which isn't that many, considering I stopped at 28, right?
It's 28's 28, my friend. That's a lot of. That's a lot, man.
But I know in the quarters I played Jay Berger, and he actually retired in our fourth set. I kind of grinded him down. He cramped up. And then in the fourth
would be a
round,
war. You and Berger would be a war.
It was a ground stroke battle, and we like I said, we'd worked together with Brian Gottfried several years earlier, so we knew our games pretty well. But I think I don't know if it was Gomez I played there, Volkov. I had a couple good matches in there. It was either 88 or 89.
Volkov,
but,
5 sets. Volkov.
5-setter, It had some good matches in the grandstand, and it was just exciting. I mean, every time I played in New York, I just always seemed to play well, rise up to the occasion, had some family and friends there, always would be in attendance, and something about that tournament. Like I said, I think when you have success at any venue, at whatever Grand Slam or tournament, you always feel good playing it the next year because you've done it there before. And I think so every year I went to New York, it was like, you know what? This is my time. I love this tournament. And a lot of players were the exact opposite. They didn't like the noise. They didn't like the airplanes. They didn't like the crowd. They didn't like the city. There was a lot of things that New York offered that players didn't like. And for me, it was the flip. I had great experiences there, great wins. So it was always a happy time for me.
Cool. Yeah. Becker in the semis, right?
Yes.
And that's just being televised everywhere. I mean, that's big time stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Becker was a tough matchup for me, no doubt about it. Him and Lendl were probably the two toughest. I mean, Becker probably beat me in more big matches than anybody. He beat me in the fifth match in Davis Cup in Hamburg in his backyard after he won Wimbledon when he was just 17. He beat me in the semis of the Open. He beat me in the quarters of the Open the next year in 1990. He beat me fourth round Wimbledon, semis of some big high-end ATP, Master Series events. So he was definitely a thorn in my side and someone who always seemed to beat me. But I did get him in Monte Carlo. I think the last time we played, I beat him in the quarters pretty handily on the dirt. So I was happy I finally got him.
Yeah. That Monte Carlo tournament to me looks like it's the nicest tournament in the world. I mean, is it as nice as it looks?
Yes, great. I mean, other than a Grand Slam, if I were to recommend for anybody to go to a beautiful venue and somewhere in the south of France, Monaco, and just enjoy a beautiful site and watch some great tennis, clay court tennis, that would be the one. It always gets a high-level field.
Yeah.
And just the setting with the Mediterranean in the background, it's incredible.
And then you got to the finals one there. I mean, by the way, you played Munster.
I did. Thomas Muster beat me in the final. Funny story there. I that was another week that I was playing incredible. I mean, the best tennis. I think I didn't play a match over 1 hour long each match, and beat everyone pretty easily. Beat Goran Pirpic, who had beaten Ivanisevic, I think, and Steek in earlier rounds. I beat him, Yugoslavian guy, 6-1, 6-1 in about 40 minutes. I must have hit like 25. I was just playing unbelievable after beating Becker in the quarters, and just felt really good about my game. And here I'm playing Muster, who at the time was the king of clay. He was on his run there where he was playing fantastic.
I would pay money to watch you two go at it on clay, especially in the finals of Monte Carlo. That'd be a ticket worth buying right there.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd played Muster a few times prior, beaten him. He had beaten me a few times, and we knew our games pretty well, and we're in the finals here. And but I knew he was in his fitness guru stage. And even though it was a best of 5 sets, which is what they played in the Masters series then, they don't anymore. But like I said, I hadn't played or been on court more than an hour. So for whatever reason, I felt like, geez, I don't know how I'm going to last with Muster on that. This is the mentality I had going in. And then I wake up at 7 a.m. or 7:30 in the morning at the Beach Plaza Hotel. I look out the window, and there's Muster like doing sprints on the thing, and I felt like I'm playing Rocky Balboa, or I'm like, how am I going to beat this guy? I'm just getting out of bed, and he's training for the match, and I'm already worried. So I felt like I kind of gave him the first set 6-2 just so I could last, and he thumped me pretty good. He was awful good, so that was kind of disappointing loss. But I think I'm actually the last American to reach the finals of Monte Carlo, I think that was 1992 that year.
That must just be so cool.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Just a place to put it together.
It was great. I mean, I played there many times. I did okay, but to get to the finals, that event, it was fun. And of course, they have these big plaques underneath the stadium where they carve all the names in. So I would have liked to have my name etched in stone there.
Yeah.
I see like Nadal's had it like 13 times, but if I could have had that just one, but it just didn't work out. Too many sprints for Mooster. It was a funny
You know what?
story.
He probably just knew where you were staying and just knew that he at the right time went outside your window. He didn't.
Exactly.
But, so let's you know what? I want to talk Davis Cup with you because let me just pull it up here so I know what I'm talking about. First of all, you played Davis Cup for the United States 4 years, right?
I did.
4 years. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. It was fun. It was an experience.
10 total matches. You were played in 5 ties. And, I could talk about all the ties, but I really want to talk about this match with Czechoslovakia. And for our listeners out there, this is let me get the year right. This is 90. 90. First of all, who was on your team in 90? And who was your captain?
Well, Tom Gorman was the captain.
Okay.
And I started my first experience with Davis Cup. I'll just kind of backtrack a little bit. Was 1983. After I had that great U.S. Open, Arthur Ashe was the captain, and
Wow.
McEnroe was on the team. Fleming was a doubles player, and I think Steve Denton, Elliot Telcher, and they had to go over to Ireland. I don't know if it was a relegation match or for a third round match, whatever it was. We had to play Ireland, and he asked myself and Patrick McEnroe, and we had both played in the finals at 18 and under Kalamazoo in the finals, and of course beat Patrick in a good match to get to the Open. But so he invited us to be practice partners. So that was my first kind of experience into Davis Cup.
Ireland is a practice partner.
Yes,
very cool.
So and that was actually where I officially turned pro. I accepted my first check, and at the time it was a $2,500 check to be a practice partner. And I remember Arthur said, "Okay, so you're accepting your check. You're going to be a real professional now." And McEnroe was there, and John was like, this could be the biggest mistake you ever make in your life. And so Arthur looked at him like, I can't believe you just said that to him. And I didn't really know what to say. I was kind of a shy young kid at the time, and I was like, did he really mean that? Like, am I doing the wrong thing here or whatever? And didn't really ask any questions or whatever. And that was kind of the end of it. And then, of course, ironically, a year later, I'm actually on the Davis Cup team in Portland, like I said, when I had the broken foot. So it was funny. Within 12 months, McEnroe was saying, this could be the biggest mistake you're making. And then I'm on his team a year later. So that was my introduction to Davis Cup with John McEnroe.
What was Ashe like?
Quiet.
Yeah.
Very respectful person. Good guy. Didn't say much at all when I was, on the court. He was the captain for me. Never when I actually played. I mean, I was on the team. Because then Gorman took over in '85 after the debacle, the U.S. team with Connors and McEnroe we had at the end of '84 when we lost to Sweden in the finals. But he was fine. I enjoyed Arthur as a companion and a coach. He was always, like I said, respectful to myself and my family. So
kind of an iconic guy now, isn't he, man?
Yes, amazing. I felt bad for what he had to go through with McEnroe and Connors, some of the ties, but that's for another day. But so that was my first introduction to Davis Cup, and then I think Ashe was the captain in '85. I'm not sure. I'd have to look back, but we played Japan, and Arthur picked me to play, and that was my first tie. And what better first match to play than Japan, where the crowd in Tokyo is actually more for me, the young buck, or at least as much for me as the Japanese crowd, as opposed to other countries at the time. So my introduction to Davis Cup play in a foreign nation was pretty benign, so to speak.
Wow.
And I won my first 2 matches, so that was fun. And we of course beat Japan pretty handily, and that was my first one. So I believe I think Ashe actually was the captain in that match, but I don't know, my memories might not serve me well. And then
Germany next,
and then Germany, and Boris beat me in the semis. when we played, or in the quarters. I'm not sure. Right after he, had
was
that
this in Germany?
Great Wimbledon run. Yeah, it was 10,000 fans on clay. He just won Wimbledon, and I was kind of known as the clay courter at the time because I was a strong clay courter, and he thumped me pretty good. I think, again, the moment kind of got me a little bit in that match. It didn't get to me too much in my career,
That's
too
big
often.
Time stuff, man.
But that one kind of did in the Connors match in '91 at the Open. Those are probably the only two where I was playing two iconic players who were just amazing, and I just watched Becker win Wimbledon, and now I'm playing him in front of 10,000 screaming German fans in Hamburg in that fifth match, and he just kind of overwhelmed me. And then I had a few other good ties here and there, some unbelievable experiences in Ecuador and in Paraguay, which was a tough loss. I ended up losing the fifth match to Victor Pecci, who was a great player.
Yeah.
But I did win one of the matches, so it wasn't completely my fault.
I don't know if I'd want to play Pecci in Paraguay.
Yeah, very tough match. He was. I don't think he ever lost in Asuncion or in Paraguay in his career. But I did beat the other player from Paraguay who played there, and I've never seen anybody who was ranked low play better than he did, and he actually beat Jimmy Ayres, who was the other player on the U.S. team at the time, and then I ended up losing to Pecci in the finals. So that was a low point in the U.S. Davis Cup.
Crazy.
It was nuts. I mean, there were people running around with Ronald Reagan masks, and when in the fourth match of the tie, right before I'm supposed to play the fifth match, when the linesman jumps up and is cheering for Paraguay, calling the ball out, it's going to be. It's really not all in the up and up, so to speak. It was a tough match, so to speak. But it was an experience. And then, I didn't play Davis Cup then for a couple years. And then we fast forward to 1990. And I'd made my kind of revival in the rankings. Agassi was a little ahead of me. And we're all in Indian Wells. And actually, Andre was supposed to go to Prague. And it was going to be Gilbert and Agassi, who were ranked, I believe, 2, 3, or 4. And one of those two numbers, 3 or 4. And I was ranked 6. And Andre pulled out at the 11th hour. And, of course, I had only played up to this point and been to only ties in other countries. And Andre said, no, I don't want to go. And the Czech team was Peter Korda, who was a very good player, and Milan Schreiber, who was a 6'9", huge serving. I mean, it was on an indoor fast lightning court like you wouldn't believe player. And then they had Karl Novacek, another top 10 player, good player. And somebody else, maybe Marian Vida. So they had a strong team, and Agassi decided not to go. So Gorman came to my door and said, "Look,
this is quarterfinal World Group,
correct?
World Group quarterfinals."
So I said, "Yeah, I'm in. I'll go." I wasn't going to turn down an opportunity to play U.S. Davis Cup. I don't care where it was, or when it was. I was going to play. I felt like it was always an honor for me to play for my country, and it was a good opportunity for me to play a big match and hopefully win, even though I'd had some tough losses previously. Two fifth match tied losses to Pecci and Becker. Now, no shame in those, but still losses nevertheless. Going home a loser because Aaron Krickstein couldn't come up with the goods on the road. So here I got to go to Prague in the quarters, and I win the first match against Schreiber in 5 sets. I think it was like 7-5 in the fifth, a five-hour match. It was like hardly any breaks, tough match on a lightning fast court.
I'm not going to let you just get out of that match because that match was incredible. It was incredible, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
I mean, what guts you showed in that match. I mean, nobody was pulling for you. You're playing a beast, and it's a match I think that kind of gets lost in Davis Cup history. It was amazing what you did in Prague that day, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough match. I was real proud of how I hung in there and won. And like I said, I'll go back to those 5-set wins that I had early in my career. Just kind of helped me in those latter matches in my career. Whenever I was deep in a 5-setter, I felt like, I'm going to hit the shots and I'm going to win this match. And I ended up pulling it out. And then I go to the press conference, was pretty sore. About 50 minutes later, I come out and Gilbert's down 6-2, 4-0 to Peter Korda in about 45 minutes. He got blitzed. I mean, like 3 straight, like you wouldn't believe. And then we won the doubles. Leach and Pugh won the doubles. So we're up 2-1 going into the final day.
Right.
And we flipped it. I'm first again. And I got to play Korda, who was a very dangerous player for me to play against. I never really loved playing lefties. They were always a little bit more difficult for me for whatever reason, especially lefties with one-handed backhands like a Korda who took the ball early and hit flat. Like you said, it was a hostile crowd, tough environment. And I just played one of the best matches I ever played. I mean, I just played great on an indoor fast surface and ended up beating him in 4 sets. And, again, that was probably one of my top 5 wins that I would say that I was most proud of in my career.
No
that
doubt. That clinched it. That
clinched the match and got us into the semis against Austria. So that's where I kind of had a little bit of a falling out with Gorman, because I was a little bit upset that I felt like, without Aaron Krickstein, we wouldn't have gotten through. And I was still a top clay quarter,
crew,
and I felt like, some other countries have the attitude that we're going to go with the guys that got us there.
Yeah.
Now, if this was a grass court or something that, there was somebody else who was better, much better than me, or shown to have better guile on a particular surface, I could get it. But this was on clay, against Mooster, who I'd beaten a few times, and Horst Skoff, who I'd beaten. So there was no reason I felt that I wouldn't be picked. But he picked Chang over me, who I'd never lost to going into that match, and he had just won the French Open the year before. So he kind of went, he might have had some pressure too. From who knows the politics of the USTA. You never know how that goes. Right. But anyways, I was pretty disappointed that I wasn't picked. And we subsequently, Sampras came in for the finals, and they invited me there. I went to the one in St. Pete, the final. And we beat Australia, and we won the Davis Cup. So, I got a trophy.
Yeah.
Being on the Davis Cup team, I felt like I was a big part of that year that we won. But it was unfortunate that I wasn't able to continue going through just because it was
politics.
It was
tennis politics.
I was playing well, and I would have liked to seen if I could have closed the deal.
You got us there, Aaron. That's why I'm never going to forget that match. I'm never going to let that match die, because I don't think a lot of the average tennis fans really, because it was a time too where it wasn't like it is now with the internet and everything. It was a tough match to find. It was a tough match to see, and
correct.
Just an epic match, though.
Yeah,
man.
no, it was fun.
Stuff.
It was fun to win.
How do you block out all that stuff when you got 10,000 Czechoslovakians yelling at you and Peruvian umpires going against you? How do you?
Well, experience on that one. Like, I dealt with it in Paraguay. I dealt with it in Ecuador. I dealt with it in Germany. So by the time we got to that match, I felt like I was a veteran of Davis Cup play. And like I said, unfortunately, I never got to play a home tie.
Yeah.
And then, the next year I think there was an opportunity too, and the captain didn't choose me as well, and I was a little disappointed because it was a match we could have won, and I just wanted to kind of play that one match at home. It would have been nice. I was kind of known as the road warrior and the guy who would let Aaron do all the dirty work.
Let him go to Prague.
Nobody really wants to go to South America or Prague. Those were tough countries. And at the time, like I said, they had neutral referees, but the umpires were not neutral, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really a tough environment, and there was a lot of stuff going on there that you wouldn't believe.
Well, it's let's hope that those matches that you did in Czechoslovakia are never forgotten, because they were epic stuff.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
well, they won't be forgotten in my mind. Anyway.
Let's talk about the Connors match. Everyone talks to you about the Connors match. I don't even really want to talk about it, but I would be remiss if I didn't. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on it or anything, but just what are your thoughts on the Connors match?
Epic match. Proud to be a part of it. It's a historic match that, at the time, you're not thinking about historic. God, they're going to play this on TV the next 10, 15 years. It's going to be the most played match probably in the history of tennis. At the time, I was just extremely disappointed that I wasn't able to beat someone like Jimmy, who happened to be my friend for many years, 15 years my senior. With the opportunity to play someone in the next round, Paul Harhus, who I'd never lost to before, to get to another Grand Slam semifinal. So, anytime you're in that situation, you want to try and make do of those opportunities and take advantage of it. So to actually lose the match was really disheartening. Probably the only match that took me up to 3 to 5 days to get over, where it really I didn't want to come out of my bed or my room or house, or didn't want to see anyone, talk to anybody.
Yeah,
it was really tough to come back from.
It's tennis.
But playing the match, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunate it didn't go my way at the end. Not surprised it didn't go my way, because I'd never beaten Connors up to that point. And that's where the mental side came in, like one of the few matches in a 5-setter that I felt like I didn't rise to the occasion. I didn't play my game, didn't go for my shots like I normally do. I kind of let Jimmy take take it to me, put the pressure on me, and I just kind of hung back and just kind of waited for the match to end instead of going after it. So that was a little disappointing from that standpoint, but I don't have any regrets about it as far as everything that happened afterwards. Like I said, I'm proud that I was a part of a famous match in tennis lore, U.S. Open history. Many people saw the match, even 10, 15, 20 years after the fact. So kind of kept my name in it, kept people knowing who I was, and that's always fun.
It's
and my
one
kids
match,
and everything.
It's one match and a beautiful body of work is the way I see it.
Exactly. So
really an incredible body of work. And then then I know ESPN does something on it and all that. But then I looked that you had this really nice kind of informal hit and giggle rematch with him, didn't you?
Correct. We had a reunion match.
Tell us about that.
ESPN did a 30 for 30 on us on Connors' run to the 91 Open, and I ended up being an integral part of it, actually, especially when they found out that I hadn't spoken to Connors since that match, which they couldn't believe. So I think they kind of pivoted and tried to make me the focal point in that match. And then afterwards, all the rain delays and, they made it a little bit like poor Aaron, and he's just an old teaching pro now, and he didn't really do anything after that match, which really wasn't the case. Obviously, I got to the semis of the Australian Open several years later. But the way the documentary portrayed it, it was like after that match, Connors did all this and everything, and Aaron kind of went away. Poor Aaron was the old tennis pro who ended up at a club just teaching tennis, which, like I said, wasn't the case at all. I love what I'm doing right now, and I thought my career, ended abruptly, meaning at 28, because of injuries and some personal issues in my life, not because of that Jimmy Connors match.
Yeah.
So I ended up calling Jimmy Connors up, actually one of the presidents at the club that I work at, St. Andrews Country Club here in Boca Raton, Florida. He was saying, Jimmy, why don't you call him up? You get all these guys coming every year to play an exhibition match. Why don't you call him up? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to call him up. So after he bothered me for a while, I was like, all right, I'll call him up. So I call him up, and he picks up the phone. It's actually his answering machine, and it was one of those like, hi, this is Jimmy, and then there was a pause, so I'm talking, and then I realized it's an answering machine. So I kind of said, hey, Jimmy, call me back. It's Aaron Krickstein, blah, blah, blah. So I figured, he's not going to call me back. And he ended up calling me back. We had a nice conversation, told him a little bit about what I'm doing these days, and that I try and host this exhibition match at my club with a former player on the tour or a former current player, and it would be, an honor and a great thing to have you come back and participate. I can't pay you what you normally probably would get paid for this, but maybe you'll do an old friend a favor and come to my club, and we'll have some fun out there. I won't run you too much. I know you've had a few hip surgeries, and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, done, I'll do it.
Wow.
So I was pleasantly surprised, I got to be honest.
Yeah.
We made a big deal of it. I invited him to the club. We had a big press conference.
Was it played right out here, right on your little stadium?
It was right
court?
at the stadium court. We had about 800 people. I brought in a lot of seats. We had a lot of press beforehand. Jimmy came just like he said he would at early afternoon. At a press conference, he did some interviews. We played the match, did an 8-game pro set. Didn't move him too much. Tired him out a little bit. Made the points a little longer, so he would suffer for all the times he made me suffer and times he beat me. But we had a great time. He was very gracious. He stayed all night, way longer than he had to. We had a dinner. He met all the members, was unbelievably kind. You would never have known this was Jimmy Connors after that 30 for 30. Yeah. And, and I told at the time when I found out he was going to do this, I told the producers and the director of the 30 for 30, because they do these 30 for 30 shorts, and I said, hey, would you guys want to come over? We're having this reunion match. And they were like, yeah, maybe we'll do that. Jimmy loved the 30 for 30. And I said, he did? And I was surprised because it didn't really make him come across so great in some of the ways that they portrayed him. And I'm like, I don't know if Jimmy cares. Jimmy, he wanted to win. That was the way he was. But anyways, long story short, it didn't pan out. And I knew, though, that it would show Jimmy in a different light. And by having this at the end after the 30 for 30, the original one, to show what we did and having this reunion match and kind of have some interviews and stuff, I thought it would have been really cool to show that, how gracious he was. And, we've kind of come full circle since that match, and we had a great, happy ending, so to speak.
Fantastic, man.
But we didn't have the 30 for 30, but the reality is it happened. And, I've stayed in touch with him a little bit. I haven't seen him but once or twice. But, I was glad it happened. I was glad I kind of felt like he said, you know what, after everything that happened in that match and all the stuff, and we haven't spoken, that I'll kind of give one back to Aaron. And so that's kind of how
That's really a nice story, Aaron.
Yeah,
it sounds like a great day, man.
It worked out nice.
Great day. Just a couple more questions here. Like, what are your thoughts on where the game's at right now, the pro game right now?
I think, the pro game with Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal has been amazing for men's tennis. I mean, it's been amazing that these three guys, probably the three best champions in the history of our sport. I mean, it'd be hard pressed for anyone to not put them in the top three as the best ever. I mean, I never really like to compare eras because, it's just hard when you got a Rod Laver who's 5'10" and competed against guys his height, and, they use different rackets, and you can't really compare balls, rackets, and things like that. I mean, different eras, and I feel like the 80s era that I played in could actually play in today's game, some of the players. And that's what I loved about my era. We had right. Becker, Edberg, Lendl, McEnroe, and then you go into Sampras, Courier, Chang, Agassi, different eras, and then you kind of wrap it up with Rafter. But a lot of different styles of play, great champions. And then all of a sudden, there's only three.
Yeah.
And there's only three. Is it because there wasn't anybody else any good, or is there only three because those guys are so great? And I think it's probably those guys are just so great. Yeah. I mean, they're so great mentally. They're so great physically. And they've been so great for so long. And they've pushed each other to this limit of, going for these Grand Slam champions. It's unbelievable when you really look at the stats of how many Grand Slams have been played over the last, let's say 18 years, and how many other players other than a handful have won slams other than those three. So I'm impressed with the game at an unbelievable, I mean, you can't even believe. Like, I'm glad I'm not playing those three guys. That's all I'll say. I feel like I was a pretty damn solid player who made the other guy, play his best to beat me. I didn't give him anything, and you had to work hard to beat Aaron Krickstein. But I don't want to be playing Rafa Nadal. No, that guy is like the Jimmy Connors, but tenfold, like hitting balls high. I mean, his spins and everything. You got to work too hard to win a game, let alone a set against that guy. So I'm happy I'm not playing in that era. That's for sure. But it's fun. But it's going to be interesting how the game evolves once these three guys, let's say in 3 years, are gone. Because someone's got to take the hierarchy from these guys. Yeah. And really, there's nobody who's really shown the wherewithal who's going to, really take it to that next level.
Yeah.
And I think tennis in general needs a U.S. superstar to go. If they can get someone like an Agassi or someone like a McEnroe who can really capture the spotlight of the public, who's going to move the needle, that's really going to help tennis. And I think that's what tennis is going to miss when these three guys are gone, unless somebody can fill that void. Yeah. And I think no one... really an American player would really help fill that. I mean, there hasn't been one since Andy Roddick, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was stopped by, the great Roger Federer, stopped him from winning multiple, Wimbledon titles.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff, though. It's good stuff. Let's cut to today. Tell our listeners what you're doing here, and talk a little about your family, right? Married, kids?
Yes.
Life seems good.
Yes, it's great.
Yeah.
I got married in 2003. I got a 17-year-old daughter. I got a 12-year-old son.
Way to go, man.
It's great. My 17-year-old daughter used to play tennis. Now she's into the arts, drama, singing, acting. She's very talented, great. Got a beautiful voice, and she's going to hopefully pursue that career. She'd like to be on Broadway one day. Cool. She used to play, had some talent, but kind of gravitated away from tennis and into the arts. My son plays a little bit. He enjoys it, but not to the degree that I did. So we don't push him at anything.
He's not on a course to win Tel Aviv at 16.
No. He was early on, and I tried to tell him that, look, there's a book called "You Got to Play." Put in 10,000 hours. You're at about 100. So you better get going here. It's not just going to snap your fingers because you're Aaron Krickstein's son. So I think he realized in the last couple of years that it's not just going to happen. You got to put in the work and anything you want to do to be great. And but he enjoys tennis. Maybe high school tennis, and who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with him in the future. But they're great kids. A lot of fun. My wife's great. Very supportive of them and me. And I'm the director of tennis at St. Andrews Country Club.
Beautiful place.
Beautiful country club, high-end, I call it resort, but it's got 700 homes, 2 golf courses. We got 14 tennis courts, and I'm in charge of the entire tennis operation. So I got 10 employees who work under me, 5 tennis professionals, 3 maintenance staff, and pro shop manager and a retail associate. So I'm in charge of running the whole operation. We got 4 ladies teams, several men's teams. We got a junior program, not a big one, but it's run 3-4 days a week in the afternoon.
The courts are beautiful.
And
the courts are beautiful. I walked in and I walked past court 13, right, the farthest court kind of out. Court 13 was beautiful, man. There was no difference from 1 to 13. Court 13 was beautiful.
Yes,
great courts here.
They're all beautiful, well kept. Playability's great, and if you're lucky enough to live at St. Andrews, it's a beautiful place to reside at, and we got some wonderful members. When I first took the job, I took it because my sister was living here and my father, and at the time I was still retired. I was kind of fiddling around in investment business, doing a little work in an upscale saltwater aquarium business. Nothing that I was going to look at full time in my life, but just kind of killing time. I was actually caddying for Morgan Pressel, my niece, who was Kathy's,
which we haven't even talked about,
which is Kathy's daughter, and she was a great golfer. And that summer, I was actually caddying for her, and she caddied. I caddied for her when she qualified at 12 years old for the U.S. Open, the U.S. Ladies Open. It was an amazing thing to watch, and great to see. And my sister was still alive at the time, and she got to watch her compete at Pine Needles in the U.S. Open when she was, just 12 years old. So that was an amazing feat. But I only came to St. Andrews because Kathy was a resident there, and she was on the tennis committee, and she was pushing me to come. She says the tennis program's in shambles. They don't know what they're doing here. Why don't you, you're kind of in limbo with your career. Why don't you get back into tennis and try it? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. I've never taught before, and that's not something I'm interested in. So a month went by, another one went by, another month went by. She kept asking me. Then it was summer, and she said it again. I said, what's going on with this club? This is a beautiful place. Well, why are you still after me? They haven't hired someone? And she goes, look, just go in for an interview, try it, and, maybe for a little while, see if you like it and go. And I said, all right, I'll go in for an interview. And we'll see. So I go in and talk to the general manager. I agreed to it, even though after he said at the end of it, look, you'll get 3 weeks vacation. I said, whoa, wait a second here. You're talking about someone who's like on vacation his whole life. Are you going to tell me I've only got 3 weeks? Like I'm my own boss here. This is what I'm thinking, but I didn't tell him this. Right. But I'm thinking like, wow, this is a real job here. So I accepted the job. 2 days later, I quit in my bed because I didn't get out of bed for a whole day until my dad read me my rights and said I can't stay retired at 34 for the rest of my life. He said, you're going to take this job and you're going to try it. You're going to work hard at it, and if it doesn't work out, you can at least say you tried it. So I said, all right, I'll try it for 6 months. I'll give you my word, I'll try it for 6 months. So almost 20 years later, I'm still here, if you can believe that. It's amazing. So no, I love it. I didn't know what to expect. Like I said, I never taught. I had to learn a lot going in. Had to learn the business, learn the industry, learn how to teach, how to become a good instructor, learn how to deal with people, become a people person. It was always in me, but I was always known as kind of a shy person. But when you're in this job, you can't be a shy person. You got to deal with all different personalities, all different levels of play, deal with problems. You got to be a problem solver, and you got to handle tough, adverse situations.
Well, they're very lucky to have you, man.
And I think I do a pretty good job, and I'm happy to be there. So it's been a win-win, I think, for both of us.
I think we covered it all, huh?
Yeah, it was great.
Did I miss anything? Did I?
Not too much.
Yeah, good.
I think you pretty much hit my career
all right.
in a nutshell.
It's a wonderful career, a wonderful life.
I appreciate that.
And you're looking great, by the way. You look fit as a fiddle, man. You're what, 6 foot?
I'm 6 foot. I weigh the same as I did when I stopped on the tour, 165, 170.
You look great, man.
So I can still move around the court pretty well. I
saw you hit a little today. I saw you out there.
enjoy hitting the ball.
Yeah.
So I get to hit with some decent players. I don't usually play in too many senior or Champions Tour events anymore, but when I do, I still like to go out there and compete a little bit. Like I said, I'll play in an exhibition at the club here and there, but really, it's I love to be on the court and share my experiences with the club members and anyone who's a member at St. Andrews, and get to spend some time with Aaron Krickstein. It's a good day for me.
Let's end it on that. Aaron, thank you so much. What a pleasure to finally meet you after all these years. And like I said in the beginning, just a beautiful career, a beautiful life. And thanks for taking time to be with RadioTennis.com today.
Likewise, Ken. Hope to see you again sometime soon.
Thank you for listening to Radio Tennis, the podcast. Please thumbs up and subscribe. Also, check out the streaming broadcast site at radiotennis.com for great live tennis presented by Ken. All the streaming broadcasts are free, no sign-up required. New sessions are being added all the time, and there is a full archive for listening to great tennis events from the past on demand. Radio Tennis is the best free streaming service for tennis, hands down. From everyone at Radio Tennis, have a great day, and we will see you at our next podcast or live stream.